Ladies and gentlemen, sports fans alike, welcome to another edition of Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago. One of the couple, two, three best podcasts around. So sit back, grab yourself a cold one and a Polish sausage, park your keister in the French room, and listen to Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago.
In Chicago, you know that all sports rock. The Bears, Hawks, Bulls, Cubs, and Sox. Pick your favorite, you can choose. As long as the Packers lose. For everything you need to know, it's Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago. Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago.
Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago. This is your hosts, Alex and Sean. We are bringing you some more free, fun, coronavirus entertainment for your quarantining needs. We even brought toilet paper. So we've got a lot of Bears talk, and we've got a special thing for you that Alex came up with that's going to be kind of fun. So stay right there, because first we want to thank our sponsor, the Rockford Ice Hogs. If you're not familiar with the Rockford Ice Hogs, they're the AHL minor league affiliate of the Chicago Blackhawks. What does that mean for you? You get to see the stars of tomorrow today at family-friendly, affordable prices. So the season is currently in hiatus, like everything else in this world. But don't worry, they will be back sometimes. So make sure you head on over to icehogs.com, get yourself a hat, shirt, jersey, and sign up for season tickets for next year. Tell them Swerski Sports sent you. Alex, how is shelter-in-place life working out for you?
Well, on a positive note, I can say I've watched some good movies the past few days, some good TV shows, so I can't complain about that.
What did you watch?
So I've watched a lot of Star Wars this weekend.
Well, that's never a bad thing.
Yeah, so kind of weird order too. I mean, the order was the same. It's just I kind of started in the middle. I figured, okay, you know what? I haven't watched Revenge of the Sith in a while, so I watched Revenge of the Sith, and then I decided, okay, you know what? I want to go to Empire, just straight to Empire. So I watched Empire, and then I watched like the first half of Return of the Jedi. So yeah, a little scrambled, but hey, you know, I thought it was a good way to spend a Saturday.
I'm sure you've already seen that they have cast for season 2 of Mandalorian.
Yes.
Rosario Dawson as Ahsoka Tano.
I am very much looking forward to it.
That can't come soon enough.
I know, especially now. I mean, there are so many things in the entertainment world that I am ready for, and really the only things we're going to get are going to be the online streaming things or television, because all the movies are being delayed. I mean, I was so excited for James Bond, and we're not going to see that until November, at least. There are some other movies that have been postponed as well. Yeah, Wonder Woman, that's another one. I forgot about that one. And I was looking forward to that one, too, because it has a lot of 80s themes in it. And though I wasn't born in the 80s, I'm an absolute sucker for 80s themed things, music, culture. It's probably why I like Stranger Things so much. So that kind of sucks, but at least we'll have some of the streaming things continue to come in. And I feel like they need to get Rise of Skywalker on Disney Plus on pretty soon. I feel like they should.
It's got to be pretty quick, because that movie Onward, the new Pixar movie, that was it's early in its theater run when everything kind of shut down, and they've already moved it to streaming. Like, you can rent it online, and then it's going to be on Disney Plus April 4th.
Wow, so like not even a week away.
Yeah, so it's really soon. And you know, it's awesome that I went to the movies and actually saw it. So, but it was really good. So April 4th, you should check that out. Yeah, Onward. It was very heartwarming. And it was like set in a Dungeons and Dragons-y kind of time. But it was good. It was really fun. And my daughter got a big kick out of it. You know, it's a Pixar movie. You know, they're pretty exceptional.
They rarely do something that's like I mean, even their worst movies are like above mediocre. Like that's
I'm trying to think
usually how it goes with them.
Like, I mean, I have not seen all of them. So like I haven't seen the sequels to like Cars.
Those are probably the worst rated Pixar movies. And even those, like, I haven't really seen them all the way through. Nobody says they're terrible. They're just not nearly as good.
Like Cars, the first one is great. The Incredibles, is that Pixar?
Yes. That's really good.
They're great. I love Ratatouille.
Oh, I love Ratatouille. I could watch that movie over and over.
Ratatouille and Up might be my two favorites.
I just watched Up last weekend. I hadn't seen it before, and I finally watched it, and I'm like, oh my god, I love Mr. Fredricksen. He's awesome, and every time I see him, I think he's like what Joe Madden will be like in 10 years.
And Wally's a good one, too.
Now, I'm a sucker for Toy Story. Just an absolute sucker for any of the Toy Story movies, as well as the Monsters, Inc. movies. I love the Monsters, Inc. movies, and I was just rewatching... have you seen Toy Story 4 by any chance?
No, I haven't. My daughter has. I have not. She watched it at Grandma's house, so I have not seen that one. In fact, I haven't seen 2. I've seen 1 and 3.
Oh, 2 is fantastic. Toy Story 2 is fantastic. What's really amazing is go back and watch the very first one, and then watch Toy Story 4 that just came out this past year, and you finally realize just what a long way the animation has come. Because if you look outside like the main characters, whether they're the toys or the humans in Toy Story, if you actually look at the environments all around them, it looks like a live action movie. That's how good the animation has gotten.
Huh. I'll have to check that out and try to watch them. I mean, because I'm working right now, but I'm not doing anything else. It's, as anybody else. So I'm trying to catch up on things. I did start watching Tiger King.
I see everybody tweeting about that. What even is it?
So there's a guy who is a weirdo, and he owned a roadside roadside zoo with like all of these big cats. He had like 100 or 200 big cats and a roadside zoo in Oklahoma. And he had some of the tigers living in his house. Just a complete weirdo and wacko. And it's about him. And apparently he had a murder for hire plot against a rival of his.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I see a lot of people tweeting about it.
It's train wreck television.
Okay.
It is basically you are watching a train wreck.
But you're enjoying it.
Yeah. I mean, you're not like, oh man, it's different than watching something where you're like, oh man, this is fantastic. You're watching because you're like, oh man, I got to see what's going to happen next. I got to see what these weirdos are up to.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
So I'm only on episode 1 so far. My wife was like, I think I could watch this. So I'm stopped and waiting for her. But it's so far it's wild.
All right. Yeah, I mean, I see people tweeting about it, so maybe I'll have to check it out. I mean, I sit at my desk in my room and work 8 to 5 every day because, we're all in quarantine now. But all around that, I don't have anything else going on or anywhere really to be. So, hey, I'll have time to check out a bunch of things.
It's funny with no live sports going on pretty much anywhere in the world. The alternative programming that sports networks have decided to put on has just varied. Like ESPN, they were playing some Disney movies, and NBC Sports Chicago has been playing classic sports games. And Fox Sports 1 right now, while we're recording this, I'm watching NFL players and former NFL players competing online again in Madden NFL. Which
is pretty cool. NBC Sportsnet right now is showing the Blackhawks Canucks series from 2010.
Yeah, right before we started recording, they had White Sox on, and then I was like, well, I'm kind of interested in this Madden thing. It's Michael Vick versus Derwin James for the championships of the esports, the Fox Esports Madden 20 Invitational.
That is so cool. That is really cool. It's honestly, like, we're pretty lucky that right now we're living in this digital internet age, because even think about if this was like 15 years ago, we didn't have all that online streaming and all these social media outlets with all these people on them. People would really be going nuts.
Oh, I know. And it's funny because to break down the fourth wall here, if you guys don't know, Alex and I record this podcast virtually from two different locations. And now...
Spoiler alert.
Spoiler alert. Way to go. Idiot. Now that's how, like, everything is being broadcast. So if you're listening to The Score, shows are being broadcast, from remotely. And it's funny because some of them actually sound pretty darn good, but some of them are terrible.
Yeah, I haven't listened really to The Score the past week or two because I figured, why bother? There's no news to talk about.
I just I had it on in the radio, like that in the car. Usually I put on Spotify or something, but I just I was like, I'm gonna flip on the radio because my phone was almost dead and I didn't have the cord with me. And so I was like, okay, well, I'll just listen to the radio. And I was like, they're all recording or broadcasting remotely. And some of them were pretty good, and some of them were pretty terrible. Like, there's the audio.
You know what they had today playing on 670 The Score? Did you hear what they were playing?
No.
The 2006 NFC Championship, the Jeff Joniak broadcast.
Oh, really?
Uh-huh.
Huh.
What a great time that was.
So, do you want to talk Bears first, or do you want to talk about the topic that you brought up?
Let's talk Bears first and save the game for last.
All right. There's not a ton Bears going on here, but I did, last week say that I wanted to go through and kind of create a based on who's under contract, who they've signed so far, look at the salary cap situation, look at the depth chart, and maybe kind of come up with a battle strategy. And I actually did that. I stuck with my word. And in the meantime, since we last talked, the Bears have signed another edge rusher, because at the time last week we were talking Isaiah Irving was their number 3, and there was a little thin. I'm very confident in the top 2 they have. When you've got Khalil Mack and you've got Robert Quinn, you feel pretty confident that they're going to do a good job of getting to the quarterback. But rotating in, or if guys get nicked or injured, who steps in? And the Bears signed a guy who was drafted very high, very, very high, a few years ago in Barkevious Mingo. I think it was 5 years ago he was drafted, and he was the number 6 overall pick in the draft. So he's a guy that's never fully lived up to the what he was in college. But the Bears brought him in cheap for a 1 year, $1 million contract. So with that kind of low risk, high reward, it fills the need. And this is kind of stepping back a little bit. This has kind of been the hallmark of what Ryan Pace has done since he's come here. He's tried to fill all the roster spots. So if he doesn't get anything else in wave 2 of the free agency, or if he doesn't draft a guy at a certain position, he could start the season where he is. He's not scrambling, and he's not forcing himself to, in the NFL draft, forcing himself into a position that they have to pick. Like, who's going to be the left tackle? Well, guess we're going to have to draft a left tackle. It's kind of, it allows him to actually, whether he actually does that come draft time, I don't know. I can't say, I'm not in the war room, but it allows him to be able to draft the best player available because he's plugged all the holes. You could always upgrade, but he's at least plugged in somebody. So that Barkevious Mingo is kind of one of those signings. You could definitely improve over him in the draft, but if you don't, he fills that void.
Yeah, you can live with it.
You can live with him. They also re-signed DeAndre Houston Carson, and they signed Jordan Lucas, and they re-signed Brent Urban, and they signed guard Jermaine Ifedi, who was another first-round pick that didn't have his fifth-year option picked up. And the Bears brought him in. I don't know what the details of that are, but he played tackle with the Seahawks. Seahawks, he was a first-round pick in 2016. He played right tackle for them, but I'm feeling like he's going to be a guard for the Bears. So, where we are now, I went through and kind of looked based on the guys the Bears have under contract, a little bit of a depth chart. And, there's going to be movement. Some of these guys are going to get cut. They're going to add people in the draft. I'm sure that they're going to probably, make some other moves. And I have a feeling there's going to be a trade on either draft day or right before. But offensively, right now as it stands, quarterback situation, you've got Trubisky, Nick Foles, Tyler Bray. And running back, you've got Ryan Nall, Tariq Cohen, David Montgomery. Now, here's where we are. The Bears' salary cap situation, they've only got like $1 million some left in cap space. So there's very, very little cap room left. Two moves that I think could happen are either trading Trey Burton or trading Tariq Cohen. And nobody wants to trade Tariq Cohen, but he's in the last year of his rookie contract right now. And he's an odd one because, remember when Devin Hester hit free agency and they're like, how do you pay him? You can't pay him all this money to be a kick returner. So they kind of made him be a wide receiver so they could pay him wide receiver money.
Mm-hmm.
Tariq Cohen right now is the backup running back, and he plays some other, he plays some wide receiver, he punt returns. But I think he's going to command a lot of money. He's going to want a lot of money. And how do you justify that for your backup running back, slash playmaker that didn't make that many plays last year?
Right. I was really big fan of Tariq Cohen the first few years, but we saw last year a lot of plays that went nowhere with him. And I mean, granted, some of that I think you can blame on the play call and the lack of blocking, but he wasn't really the human joystick that we have been wanting to see. I feel like you're at the point where you could move on from Cohen and, maybe draft somebody else. And I don't think you're really losing a whole lot at this point if you do move on from Cohen. And it's not to say he can't bounce back next year, but he's not he's not a star quarterback. He's not a star defensive guy like Khalil Mack or Akeem Hicks or Eddie Jackson. I mean, this, as I've said many times before, running backs are very, very replaceable. I mean, Cohen's versatile, so that's where a lot of his value comes in, and his size and speed allows him to, move past guys and whatnot. But I just feel like a guy like Cohen is incredibly replaceable, and letting him go and not paying him the money just might be worth it in the end.
It has nothing to do with his talent. I think you're going to see a bounce back year from him, but my concern is how few draft picks the Bears have. I mean, we talked about it a little bit last week, and as it stands right now, the Bears have 2 second-round picks, a 5th-round pick, 2 6th-round picks, and 2 7th-round picks. So there's an all right number of picks, but most of them are in the very late rounds. That's not how you build a championship level team. So you need some of those picks, and to get extra picks, you either trade back, and you sort of need the impact players of the higher level picks. So that's not a good option. And it's to trade veterans. And honestly, what veterans do you have on this team that you can move? So,
not a lot.
I think Trey Burton maybe. I mean, his high salary kind of limits him, but Tariq Cohen doesn't
really do much for you though, right? With the money, the guaranteed money, isn't that how it works?
But Tariq Cohen has $2 million, so
I'm talking Trey Burton.
Trey Burton. Let's see. Over the cap. And while I'm doing that, I'm going to keep talking. So Tariq Cohen, it clears $2 million of cap space, which is not a ton, but the Bears really don't have a lot of wiggle room. So
no,
it gives them, at least some wiggle room there to bring in a low cost player. And it also probably gives them a pick. It sort of locks them into a position of having to draft another running back, because they would only have 2 then in the roster. But it at least gives you another pick, because you could pick. There's always a decent running back in rounds 5 or 6.
Right, exactly.
So here we go. Let's see. Where's Trey Burton? Trey Burton. Why aren't you? Let's see. If they were to cut Trey Burton, they would. Oh man, it really does not give them much cap room.
No, it doesn't.
It only gives them a couple $100,000. So yeah, you're probably going to see Trey Burton here.
Exactly, that's the thing. I feel like Cohen's the guy you could trade, get return on what you could need for the future, and I mean, I think Cohen is a talented guy, but it's talent that can be replaced. I mean, think about it. You don't see running backs, even the best running backs. You don't want to see them sign to big deals these days anymore. It's just, I mean, look at Todd Gurley. He got all that money, and the Rams just parted ways with him. I feel like it's such a replaceable position these days where you have to make a choice. Do you pay him all the money or not? I
mean, it sort of goes like this with Tariq Cohen. It depends on what the market is for him. If you could get a solid return for him, if you could get a 2nd or 3rd round for him, I'd say you move on from him. But if you're not getting much, then teams are only offering you 5th or 6th round for him, then that's the kind of move. Then you're just like, well, I'll keep him. I'll get what I can out of him this year, and then we'll see what kind of money he commands in the offseason. If he leaves,
that's very true.
it depends on what you can give for him, because there's always it's always
don't trade him for nothing. I'm not saying that.
It's, there you can find value in him, but I mean, if you can get something good for him, whatever it has to be better than the compensatory pick you'll get if he leaves.
Right. It's got to be worthwhile. You don't trade him away for scraps. I mean, that's very true. You gotta evaluate the market.
It's just he's arguably the only guy under contract that you could part with that could bring you something back that you can live with.
Right. Again, replaceable. That's what I was getting at. Replaceable.
Because you could trade Allen Robinson, but you can't replace Allen Robinson at this point.
No, you can't. No.
No, I mean, Cody Whitehair you could trade, but you can't replace him.
He's your best lineman right now.
Yeah, you could obviously trade Khalil Mack, but you don't get return on that, and you can't replace him. So it's if you look in order to build more draft capital, you need to be able to trade somebody, and pretty much you're looking at Tariq Cohen.
Yeah.
But going back to the depth chart here, so wide receivers, we've got Allen Robinson, Cordero Patterson, Anthony Miller, Riley Ridley, Thomas Ives, Javon Wims, Alex Wesley, and Reggie Davis. Really, you're probably only keeping 5 or 6 guys, and so you're keeping Cordero Patterson, Allen Robinson, Anthony Miller, Javon Wims, and Riley Ridley. That's 5.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Yeah.
Of those other guys, maybe Thomas Ives, or if you draft somebody. But if you're the Bears, you could go into the season, be like, I would love to have more depth and better talent at the wide receiver position, but I can live with this.
I still think that next year is a good year to try to give Riley Ridley some more chances to play legit games.
I think you're going to see a lot more. Use of the tight end, and it's going to sort of not make it a necessity to use so much wide receiver plays. So you're going to see a lot more tight ends, and that's going to, they're probably going to carry at least 4 tight ends on this roster.
So Graham, Burton. Do they still have J.P. Horsted?
So right now, who they have under contract is Jimmy Graham, Trey Burton, Adam Shaheen, Ben Broniker, J.P. Holtz, Dax Raymond,
J.P. Holtz,
Jesper Horsted.
I literally put the two together.
Eric Saubert, Darian Clark, and Demetrius Harris. So they've got a lot of tight ends.
But how many of them are good?
None. Exactly 0. One of them could be good if he was healthy, and the other one was really good when he wasn't 200 years old.
Right. Do you think that they continue with the Adam Shaheen experiment?
I think they're going to give him this opportunity, but I think unless he is significantly better, like comes into camp looking head and shoulders better than he did last year, he's going to be gone.
Yeah.
I think Horsted and Holtz are probably better than he is at this point, and the Bears have enough of those options where somebody will be able to step up, because Burton and Graham are going to be your top 2. Broniker, he's a special teams guy, and he's never done anything bad per se, other than he gave up that one punt block, but that wasn't fully his fault. But he's a valuable special teams guy, so you're probably keeping him. So it's really down to one spot that you're looking for, and you've got 7 guys for that one spot. And I would not be surprised if the Bears, if they'll probably draft a tight end.
Yeah, I could see it.
You know,
I
because
definitely saw it before they signed Jimmy Graham, but I still could see it.
I mean, Jimmy Graham is essentially a 1-year deal with an option. So if he doesn't
Right.
play well this year, you move on from him, and it gives you the, you know, if you do draft somebody, it gives them the year of learning, and then they can just step right in next year. You're not relying on a rookie tight end that's an unknown commodity.
Right.
So you know, that's a spot where they could start the season with who they have, pulling from that pool, but it would be nice to see an improvement of talent there.
Yeah, absolutely. You want a tight end core that's improved from last year, and when I mean improved from last year, I mean at least better than Bills fan puke.
Bills fan,
Because that's pretty.
that is really what you
much-
had last year.
It pretty much was. I mean, what the biggest tight end plays were by it was either Jesper Horsted or J.P. Holtz, that one or two nice runs they had in that Cowboys game, if you remember what I'm talking about. Those are literally the only good tight end plays I can remember from last year.
It really was puke.
Yeah, it was bad.
So left tackle, we're with Charles Leno and Dino Boyd.
Boyd.
Right tackle, Bobby Massey, and I'm taking some liberty here. Is I put Rashad Coward as the backup at right tackle. I think the goal is for him to not start. I think the goal of him is to be the backup at right guard and right tackle.
You're probably right.
So I put him at right tackle. Left guard, James Daniels and Corey Levin. Right guard. I think this is right as it stands right now, you know, barring them drafting somebody. I have it as a battle between Alex Bars, the undrafted rookie last year from Notre Dame, and the guy they just signed this week, Jermaine Ifedi. And then center, Cody Whitehair, and then the other undrafted rookie from Notre Dame, Sam Mustipher. So that's who you have on offense right now. So, I mean, is there plenty of room for improvement? Yes.
Absolutely.
But if you start the season like this, you've got a full roster and that you could live with. And then cutting over to the defense, your cornerbacks, Kyle Fuller, Artie Burns and Buster Screen, and Kevin Tolliver, Duke Shelley. Those guys probably are roster spots. They're winning roster spots. You know, I think you're actually pretty happy with your slot corner competition because Buster Screen gave you a good year last year.
Yes,
and
he did.
You're really positive about Duke Shelley. So I think that's a good battle there. Kevin Tolliver did some nice things. Artie Burns, he's a guy I think hopefully he can grow into who he's going to be. And you know who Kyle Fuller is, and you like him. Then you also have Xavier Crawford, Trey Robertson, and Michael Joseph. So again, you could live with the cornerbacks that you have, but I have that's a definite spot where you can improve.
Absolutely.
Outside linebacker, Khalil Mack, Robert Quinn. You're very happy with what you have right there.
I would hope they'd be very happy with that.
And then your backups, you have Isaiah Irving, Barkevius Mingo, James Vaughters, who was our camp superstar, preseason superstar that we all loved. Still there. Devontae Bond. So again, I could see some improvement there as your rotation pieces, but at least your starters, you're rock solid. Your defensive line, you've got Akeem Hicks, Eddie Goldman, Bill All-Nichols, Abdullah Anderson, Brent Urban, and Roy Robertson Harris. I think you're pretty solid there. It'd be nicer to have a backup for Eddie Goldman, except right now you'd be putting somebody a little bit out of place to line up at nose tackle. But you've got a pretty solid defensive line there. Inside linebackers, Danny Trevathan, Roquan Smith. You're pretty solid there, but
pretty good there.
Your backups are not so desirable. You've got Josh Woods and Joel Iwabinaway. So I would be shocked if they don't bring in some competition at inside linebacker. And then the last two positions right now, your starters at safety are probably Eddie Jackson and Deion Bush.
Yeah.
And then backups right now, you've got Jordan Lucas, who you just brought in, DeAndre Houston Carson, who you just signed, and Kentrell Bryce. So it would be nice to have some safety depth.
Yes, it would.
So I did a mock draft here, and I did a 7-round mock, and I used there's draft simulators out there. So there's we talked about this last year at the draft. There's draft simulators where they take big boards, composite big boards from like CBS Sports and some other sites that list their big boards and do a composite of all the players in the draft. And then they have a computer system, draft based on best player available and team needs for the other teams. And then you draft for the team you pick. So I picked the Bears, obviously, and I actually was pretty happy with the way the draft turned out. With the first of the 2 second-round picks, I chose Grant Delpit, who's a strong safety out of LSU. He's a guy that could be a like a late first-round pick, and he falls to the Bears, sort of the middle of the second. And he's a perfect complement, I think, to Eddie Jackson. He's a true strong safety, and I think he can battle it out with Deion Bush, probably beating out Deion Bush, and making Bush your primary backup, which I think is the better option for him. Mm-hmm. With the second of your 2 second-round picks, I have them drafting Cole Kmet, who's the highest rated tight end in the draft out of Notre Dame. So that's a big one, because I think then he fills one of those voids of your tight end spots that you have. He makes Adam Shaheen replaceable, and he probably makes Jimmy Graham replaceable next year.
That'd be ideal. I mean, for the future, that at least.
And then you skip over the 3rd round because the Bears aren't in there. You skip over the 4th round because there's nothing for the Bears. And then you go to the 5th round, and I have them drafting Shane Lemieux, a guard out of Oregon, who is a guy that I was anticipating him going in like the late 3rd, and he fell to me in the 5th, so I was very happy with that. And then after that, you have 2 6, 2 7s, and I sort of just drafted high upside guys. So in the first of the 6 rounders, I have Derek Tuska, who's an edge rusher from North Dakota State. And I watched this guy, and it's really hard to judge him because he played in D2 at North Dakota State, which is where Carson Wentz played. He absolutely dominated the competition. I mean, it was like when you watch like a Pee Wee game and there's one kid that's way bigger than everyone else and just destroys everybody. That's kind of was like watching him. So I think he's one of those guys where I could see him being a guy that comes in, takes a year or two to figure out the NFL, and then, really, really comes into his own He's got a high motor. He's a tenacious guy, and as long as he can put on the strength, I think he could be a solid pass rusher in this league. So, he in the 6th round, I think it's well worth taking a risk on him. And the other 6th round pick, I have Jacob Phillips, inside linebacker from LSU. So he was a starting linebacker for LSU, and he was pretty solid. That's I think that's an improvement over the backups you have. 7th round, the first one, I have J.J. Taylor, the running back out of Arizona. He's actually a running back I kind of like. He's very bowling ball type guy. I think he could be a good complement for David Montgomery, especially if you decide to part ways with Tariq Cohen. Mm-hmm. And then last is another high upside guy with Tyler Clark, defensive lineman out of Arizona. So I was actually pretty happy with that draft pick, considering how few picks they have and how most of them are late in the draft. I think that's a pretty solid draft. If something worked out like that, I'd be pretty happy. I mean, obviously my concern is the Bears are going to trade up and trade more of their draft capital.
You think they're going to do that? Or is it more of a fear?
It's my fear. I could see them trying to trade up into the end of the 1st round, so they get a 5th-year option on somebody.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know, man. I just don't want to give up that draft capital.
No, I hear you.
So yeah, I mean, so the Bears really don't have a lot of wiggle room. They've got like $1.5 million. They're probably gonna, convert some money into signing bonuses so you can spread it out. But I think they might be done other than the draft.
Yeah, I don't see them doing much else. I mean, how can you?
I mean,
unless you make a trade.
But other than Cohen, I don't see too much room for trade here.
I don't either.
So, I think we're going to be real quiet with the Bears for the next couple weeks. The NFL draft is less than a month away.
For now.
Yeah, I think we're quiet for right now. I'm looking at the calendar really quickly here, and so Wednesday is April 1st, and the NFL draft is not this week. So 1, 2, in like 3 weeks, like 3.5 weeks. So we're getting real close to the NFL draft.
Again, for now. We'll see how they go about it.
It's going to be interesting because you can't bring guys in. You can't go visit guys. I'm curious of what's going to happen with Tua, because he's a guy that could probably be a top 5 pick, but he's hurt, or he had a bad injury last year.
Mm-hmm.
So, teams can't evaluate him. Are you gonna take a chance, a top 5 pick on a guy and not know if he's healthy?
Yeah, that's got to be a huge concern for them. I mean, look at the Cam Newton situation, where the Bears and possibly other teams were concerned about his health and they couldn't really test it out.
Yeah, I'm really curious of where Cam Newton's going to wind up. I mean, he's going to get a starting spot somewhere. It might not be until after the draft.
Yeah, it's very possible.
Because I could see a team like the Dolphins, where if they decide they're not going to go with Tua, that they bring in, bring in Cam Newton.
I could definitely see that. Yeah,
like I could see that, but the one I have no idea is the guy from Tampa. Where is he going to go?
Oh, Jameis Winston? Yeah, I don't know.
He might have to take a backup spot.
I mean, who
honestly.
else is looking for a starter right now? outside potentially like a Miami.
I mean, let's take a quick look here. So let's start with, I guess, the NFC East. Dallas is set with Dak Prescott.
Mm-hmm.
He may be a franchise tag, but he's going to be their quarterback. Eagles are set with Carson Wentz.
Mm-hmm.
The Giants like the guy they have. Redskins, maybe?
Yeah, well, don't they have the young kid now playing?
Yeah, but I don't. Do you like him enough to hand the keys to the kingdom? So the Redskins are a possibility. NFC North, the Packers are set. Vikings are set. The Bears don't have any room to bring in a Cam Newton, and they don't want a Jameis Winston.
Right.
And the Lions are probably riding high with Stafford.
Right. I would doubt they wouldn't be.
The NFC South, the Saints have Breeze.
Mm-hmm.
Falcons have Matty Ice.
Mm-hmm.
The Buccaneers have Tom Brady.
Mm-hmm.
And the Panthers just got rid of Cam Newton, so they're not bringing him back.
Obviously.
And they're probably not bringing in Jameis Winston. But Panthers, who knows what they're doing. The 49ers have Garoppolo. Seahawks have Russell Wilson. The Rams are tied to that albatross.
Yes, they are.
And the Cardinals have, the guy that they want to ride with.
Murray, yep.
That's NFC. You've really got the Panthers. Panthers and the Redskins. AFC, Patriots have a spot. Cam Newton might end up there. That's a possibility.
Yeah, I was actually just thinking that. What about the Patriots? What are they going to do? And even if they draft someone, I don't think they'd want to put him in the fire just yet. Wouldn't you think they'd want to bring in a veteran too?
Yeah, I think they've got a kid that they sort of like, but I don't know if they're willing to put everything on him unless this is a kind of retool year.
Which it might be, but I still feel like they'd try to bring in a veteran.
So the Patriots are a possibility. The Bills like their quarterback situation. The Jets got their guy. They're not their puke. Jets got their guy. Dolphins are a possibility.
Mm-hmm.
Ravens got their guy. Steelers got their guy for now. They're not going to bring in another starter. If anything, they'll bring in a young guy to back him up and hopefully groom into a spot.
Yeah, I don't see them bringing in a veteran.
The Browns got their guy. The Bengals are about to get their guy in Joe Burrow. Texans got their guy. The Titans got their guy. The Colts just signed a guy.
Yeah, Phil Rivers.
The Jaguars are a wild card too.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, is Minshew the guy or is he the guy right now?
Yeah, I could see them going. Well, I could, and I also couldn't because they're probably thinking, okay, we just gave a lot of money to Nick Foles, and that didn't really work out. So do we want to get another veteran quarterback and pay him, or do we just kind of want to see what we have in Minshew this year? I think that's what they're kind of going back and forth on.
So they're a wild card, and then the Chiefs are set, the best quarterback in football. The Broncos,
maybe.
Raiders are a wild card because I don't think they like Derek Carr that much, but I don't think they're bringing in Cam Newton. I think the Chargers are just planning to draft and go that route. Then there you go. So there's not a lot of spots there for these quarterbacks. I think Jameis Winston's probably going to have to accept a backup role somewhere.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, Newton and Winston will end up with jobs. It's just a matter of where and when they do.
I think Cam Newton is a starter in this league still.
Me too.
I don't think he's a top end starter anymore, but I think he's a starter. Jameis Winston, is weird. He's got so much talent, but man, he makes bad decisions.
I know. I mean, you look at all the yards, you look at all the touchdowns, you see the type of arm he has, but he gets picked off quite a bit.
Did you read about Bruce Arians talking about Jameis Winston? He was basically saying, hey, I called all these teams to tell them, what a great guy and what a hard worker Jameis Winston is, and we were totally going to bring him back if we couldn't get Tom Brady or Teddy Bridgewater.
Oh boy.
So I was like, yeah, if you couldn't get somebody else, you were gonna go get him. Okay.
It's funny.
So yeah, I think the Bears are standing pat for now until the draft. I think just the financial wiggle room is not there for them to make any splashes. It'd be nice to upgrade at some positions, but I think the draft is where they're at. Maybe afterwards you can you can find some wiggle room somewhere through a trade or cutting somebody, but right now you're sort of stuck. We're for the rest of the time we're just going to be hearing about players that are linked to the Bears.
Yeah, pretty much.
So let's go to the topic that you messaged me about.
Okay, so, I figured we'd do a lot of these games since there isn't a bunch of news. We're going to do some good games that are fun. We're going to do some fun games that are fun, but also bring up some bad memories. So I figured, why don't we start with the negative and get it out of the way? This game is very simple. We made a top 10 worst Chicago losses of our lifetime, not the past decade, of our lifetime. So as long as we've been alive, we've been able to witness it in some fashion. That is the game that I had planned. And basically what I thought we'd do is we'd go 10 to 1, and at each slot we'd give our number 10s, and then we discuss, and then our 9 and our 8, and so on and so forth. Seems pretty simple, right?
Yeah, works for me.
Okay, so and then after all this, I had a few honorable mentions but I'll say that after the list. Okay, so let's start with number 10. What is your number 10?
So this isn't actually a game per se. It was losing the 2016 Olympics as being the favorite to host the 2016 Olympics. Stepping back, I'm a huge fan of the Olympics. More so the Winter Olympics than the Summer Olympics, but I love the Olympics. I absolutely love them, and I've always wanted to go to the Olympics. And 2016 was going to be my first opportunity. It's like, man, it's going to be in Chicago. It's going to be here. I can without having to. I could stay at my house, not have to worry about travel, not have to worry about, getting, travel visas and anything. Just going from my house to the Olympics, it's going to be fantastic. And not only did the city of Chicago not get the Olympics, they got bounced in the first round.
I was homesick from school that day, so I was watching on TV with my mom the whole selection round, and right off the bat, Chicago has been eliminated, and I'm thinking, oh, well, there it goes.
Yeah, so that was a heartbreaker. And, it's funny. My best friend and I were arguing about it. And he's like, I don't want it. I don't want the traffic. I don't want all the nightmares it's going to bring. And I'm just like, I want every second of it. I want all of it. I'm like, I am going to go to the kayaking. I'm going to do anything I can get tickets for. I'm doing. I'm taking all that time off of work, and I'm going to go to every single event I can get tickets for.
You were an Olympic meatball.
I am an Olympic meatball. My wife and I ended up watching so many stupid sports and that I don't understand the rules for, and I would never watch it any other time, but it was the Olympics. And I'm like, oh man, it's in the middle of the night and I'm watching, it's 2 a.m. and I'm watching Olympic coverage of, Serbia's, swim relay team.
There really is a magic to the games, and I I would dream of a day where we would see here in Chicago the Winter Olympics. Could you imagine like the hockey? Oh, that'd be so cool.
My wife and I were talking about the next Winter Olympics. We're like, depending on where it is, we are gonna go. And so they had it down to like the final 4 cities. It was like Oslo, Almaty, Kazakhstan, another city in Europe. Was it Amsterdam? Not Amsterdam. I don't remember what other city it was. Maybe it was Helsinki.
That'd be a great place.
And then it was Beijing, and I was like, if it's anywhere but Beijing, we're going. And then Beijing got it, and I was like, damn it. And my wife's like, I don't know if I want to go to Almaty, Kazakhstan. And then I Googled pictures of Almaty, Kazakhstan, and she's like, all right, I could be down for this. This looks pretty cool. So, but it ended up being Beijing. I'm like, I don't want to go. So that was a bummer. But I love the Olympics. So honestly, that, as odd as it sounds, that's in my top 10 losses.
Okay. All right. Very interesting. Very unique. I like that. I like the uniqueness. Mine is a lot less unique. I won't go into much detail because we all pretty much know how it ended. 2018, the wild card game at Wrigley Field. Look, going into that game, it felt like they were pretty much doomed, and frankly, the Cubs gave off that vibe that they were pretty much doomed. But I just figured I'd put it in my top 10 just because, really just, in my lifetime, there's obviously another heartbreak that's on this list for the Cubs, but a lot of the other heartbreaks that have happened, I haven't really been around for, so I just figured I'd put that on the list. So long story short, that was my number 10.
What was your 10? I'm sorry.
The wild card game at Wrigley Field, 2018, losing to the Rockies in extras.
Yeah, that was a sucky one. I mean,
it was just miserable.
For me, I'm a lot older than you, so I have a lot more years of finding terrible things. So a lot of mine are probably from before you were born.
Good. I like the diverse list. That's good.
Yeah. So I didn't rank mine. I have just the 10. So I'm going to kind of go through. I'm going to go this one next.
So this is your number 9.
I'm going to go with another non-actual sport one. It was Derrick Rose's injury.
Okay. You know what? Yeah, that's okay.
And this one was huge because he's a generational talent, and he was the youngest MVP in NBA history.
Yeah.
The future was so bright of what he could do, what he could become, where he could take the Bulls franchise. And that knee injury was absolutely devastating to the organization and to him. It was really sad to see that. And it was, heartbreaking on multiple levels because you're like, man, that's devastating to watch this young kid go through this injury. And it sucks because it really set back the franchise. You couple that injury with the awful front office staff, and it's just this team is then in just not even purgatory. It is just a fiery hell.
Yeah. I'll never forget watching it. I was getting ready for my senior prom when that happened. I will never forget that.
So all the rest of mine are games except for one. So go on from there. So your next one.
So my number 9 was week 1 against Green Bay in 2018. You were up 20-3, and then you blow it. And the pain of that game subsided as time went on that season, especially after we beat Green Bay to win the NFC North. But I look back now and think, if we won that game and everything else, followed through the same way, they probably would have gotten that first round bye. And who knows what difference that could have made in the long run. And I mean, at the end of the day, you're up 20-3 against the team that always beats you, and you look like you're finally going to beat the crap out of them, and then that happens. That was that was one of the all-time low moments for that entire franchise.
Pretty much. I would agree.
Okay, so what's your number 8?
My number 8, I'm going to go with the 1984 Leon Durham game for the Cubs.
Uh-huh.
So the Cubs were playing the Padres, and it was in the best of 5 series for the National League Championship Series. Winner goes on to go to the World Series, and Leon Durham boots a routine grounder. It was basically the Cubs' version of Bill Buckner. And
You know what's very crazy is Bill Buckner was traded from the Cubs that same year.
he was. So Leon Durham ends up booting a routine grounder, and the Cubs go on to lose and don't go to the World Series.
I feel like that play would be a lot more famous among baseball like lore today had that not happened to Bill Buckner on an even bigger stage.
Right. It was, yeah, it's basically the same feeling that everybody had about Bill Buckner. Except, honestly, the only reason it's not higher on my list is because I was only a kid when it happened. But I remember I cried. You know, because everybody had told me, that basically being a Cubs fan is great, except you're never going to see a World Series. And I was
Luckily,
like,
that's different.
Things have changed, but that was a long time between 1984 and 2016.
Oh, yeah.
It's a long time. And so as a kid, I'm like, man, I'm going to see this right away. And
The Cubs just Bills puked all over you.
they pretty much did. So that's my number 8. It's the Bill Buckner game.
Well, very similar to you, my number 8 is the Bartman game. And the reason why it's low on the list is because, kind of like what you just said, I was in elementary school when that game happened. I really, I remember it happening. I remember that whole debacle, but I wasn't as emotionally into it. I really started getting emotionally into all the sports teams in middle school. I still went to games as a kid. I still watched when I could. I tried to follow, but I wasn't as avid of a follower when I was a younger kid and just wasn't as emotionally into it, which I think is natural for a lot of younger people. The whole fact that they were 5 outs away from being somewhere they hadn't been in nearly 70 years, it didn't click to me at the time. Now, if this would have happened, when I was an adult, I would have been beyond devastated by it. But I felt like I had to include that on the list just because it was such a big moment in Chicago sports history that happened in my lifetime that I do remember witnessing.
Yeah, that was actually the next one on my list too. Not particularly that game, but those last 2 games.
Yeah.
I put it as the Cubs collapse, the 2003 collapse. And I just remember how devastated I was because, again, just like the Leon Durham game, I was like so close from the Cubs being in the World Series, something that at that point, I would come to grips with that it was never going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. I'm never going to see the Cubs go to the World Series. And after the first couple games of that series, I was like, the Cubs are going to go to the World Series. The Cubs are going to do it. And I was so sure. And then everything just switched, and the Marlins won that Bartman game, and it was like you felt that it was that game or bust because all of the wind was out of the Cubs' sails. They could have come out and won that next game, but the wind was out of their sails, and you were just like, that's it. They didn't win this game. You just knew they weren't going to win the next game.
I was just going to ask you, did you have confidence going into Game 7 even with Kerry Wood on the mound?
None. I had zero confidence.
I probably wouldn't have either. If I was older, I probably wouldn't have had any either.
Yeah, I was like, that's done. When they lost that game, I I remember my friend Mark was, he's a Phillies fan. I lived in Philadelphia at the time, so he was sitting there with me just because like he knew how close this was to being historic, and he sat there, and I remember he watched just me be devastated, just sitting there, I was just devastated because once they lost that game, I was like, they're not winning the next one. It's done. And
Yeah.
so that next game really didn't faze me that much because I was already ready for it.
Sure. Yeah. I understand that. I understand that completely. So that was your number 7 then.
That was my
Yeah,
7.
that would have been your. Okay, so my number 7 was 2011. It was that first round against the Vancouver Canucks where they were one overtime goal away from coming down from a 3-0 series against the President's Trophy winners and winning. They forced overtime late in Game 7 on a shorthanded goal by Taves, and when Taves scored that goal to force overtime, I thought it was in the bag. Patrick Sharp missed a game-winning and game-series-winning goal by a few inches. He just didn't lift it up enough. And then Chris Campoli gave it away to Alex Burrows. Shot it past Crawford. That was the end of that. Oh, they were so close from having one of the biggest historical comebacks ever. And it didn't happen.
Yeah, that was a rough one.
Yeah.
All right, so what's next on my list? 6?
Yep.
6. The 1986 Chicago Bears first round playoff loss to the Redskins.
Oh, wasn't that a game where Walter Payton fumbled?
It was a game that you're like, all right, they were so close in 1984. 85 they win it. 86 you're like, all right, this is a really good team too. And they go out and they just they lose to the Redskins. And again, nobody was ready for this. The whole city was, we're going to get another Super Bowl. We got another Super Bowl here. And boom. It just, you didn't, the first round, you don't even get an opportunity to get excited. It's like, somebody ripped it right out of your hands right away. And you don't even know what to expect. If you lose in the championship game, it sucks and it hurts. But it was like what the hell just happened? When nobody was prepared for this.
Yeah, I know. My dad's told me about that game a lot and kind of what a shocking loss it was. Sometimes I think about the '80s Bears, and though I didn't witness them, I think, man, even to me, someone who didn't witness them, it feels like looking back that they should have won at least one more, but they didn't.
Oh, that was a toughie.
Well, my number 6 is Bears related too. This was truly, I think, the first Chicago sports loss that really bugged me. 2006 when they lost the Super Bowl. That I did not sleep well that night, and I know they did not play well enough to win that game. They didn't deserve to win that game. They didn't blow a late lead. But just losing the Super Bowl, it stung. And especially, it started off great. That when Devin Hester brought back the kick, I was thinking, we got this. We got this. And then everything after that just went to shit. But, if it was any ordinary regular season game, you think, okay, you played like crap, whatever. Just the fact that it was the Super Bowl and the stakes were at an all-time high, it really hurt. That I got over that loss pretty quickly, but I'll just never forget that night not being able to sleep after that loss.
Yeah, that's on my list. It's a little higher though.
I figured it would be.
So where are we at? 5. 5, I have the 1984 NFC Championship game, Bears versus the San Francisco 49ers, and they lost 23-0. It was so infuriating. My dad kid you not, took off his shoe and threw it through the TV at one point. So we didn't see the rest of the game because we only had the one TV, and he threw his shoe through it. He also broke the kitchen table.
Yikes.
He was I think he smoked 3 packs of cigarettes during that game.
So he went on a cigarette bender, basically.
Yeah, it was the angriest I've ever seen my dad. So it was I just remember watching it, and I was heartbroken because that's about the age when I started falling in love with football, and the Bears had a very good team, and you're like, oh man, I the Super Bowl was something new to me, so I was like, oh man, we're about to be the best team in the world, and suddenly it just like yoink, you just got mud stomped by the 49ers, and that started my hate for the 49ers. And Joe Montana.
Well, mine's pretty similar to yours. My number 5 is the 2010 NFC Championship game. It was the fact that we lost to Green Bay in the biggest NFC game that there is at home. You let the Green Bay Packers come into Chicago and beat you to go to the Super Bowl. Oh my God, I couldn't watch it. I just couldn't watch it. And look, you lost your starting quarterback. You at first went with Todd Collins, who couldn't throw 5 yards. Your defense played pretty well. Aaron Rodgers didn't light the world on fire in that game, so you were within striking distance the entire time. You never led. You were trailing pretty much the entire game, but they were pretty much right within striking distance that entire time. And what also gets me about that NFC Championship game, 2 things. One, if Cutler stayed healthy and they would have won that game, I really feel like they would have won that Super Bowl, because I didn't think that Steelers team, I didn't think they were that good. And number 2, like, we thought we were over the Packers curse in the mid-2000s, because if you may not remember, in the mid-2000s, the Bears went 7-3 against the Packers, and their old-time nemesis Brett Favre was gone. So it kind of looked like we were past that. And then this NFC Championship game just gave birth to arguably a worse stretch against the Packers, or almost as bad stretch, because I know it was really bad in the 90s, but it was like the demons against the Packers that were there for 20 years that looked like they were finally going away were basically reborn in that game.
That game is number 4 on my list.
Okay.
And, it was the team, you're right. We trailed the whole time. We had the opportunity to win it. I really think if Cutler was healthy, we would have won that game. But it was a team that we lost to, and the fact that afterwards had to hear so much hate about Jay Cutler and how he was a wimp. And
that was bad.
And that was just really frustrating. That added so much, I guess, negative feelings and hurtness to it, because you're like, the guy really got injured. You could say a lot of things about Jay Cutler, but man, calling him not tough is not one of those things.
Couldn't even stand. Would you really want a guy on one leg trying to throw the football with a chance to go to the Super Bowl? Do you really think that Jay Cutler would just give up on a chance to go to the Super Bowl? No. It wasn't a regular season game.
Yeah, I mean, the guy was actually seriously injured.
Yes.
And so it's, it's hard. It's hard to understand why people. I mean, I get if you hate him, but like hate him for like legit reasons, not for that game. Because that's just silly. The guy was legitimately injured. And when other players said it, that's super shitty, because, the guy had a serious injury.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, that was a very frustrating afternoon.
it was extremely frustrating afternoon. And Caleb Haney actually had a decent game there. I mean, other than the interceptions, but 153 yards passing. He had a touchdown.
He almost brought them back.
Yeah, Todd Collins was terrible.
0
for 4 with a 39 quarterback rating.
There was a video on YouTube. I don't know if it's still on, where they edited the audio over Todd Collins coming in, and it was Michael Scott going, "No!" when he saw Toby again.
Speaking of Michael Scott, I saw somebody took a photograph of somebody. You know how like people will put like lost cat signs on light posts. They put a picture of Michael Scott with his Prison Mike bandana on and said, "The worst part about quarantine is the Dementors."
Oh, that's wonderful.
The Dementors. But I mean, Aaron Rodgers in that game only had 244 yards passing, no touchdowns, 2 interceptions, and a quarterback rating of 55.
Yeah, the thing about the 2010 Packer team was they don't get enough credit. The defense really won that Super Bowl for them. That was the last time the Packers had like a legit Super Bowl caliber defense.
All right, so that was my 4. What was yours?
So I think this is a very tragic story that doesn't get talked about a lot. The 2015 Chicago Bulls. And the particular game I'm talking about was Game 4 against the Cavs, when LeBron ended up hitting the buzzer beater after getting a phantom timeout after the Bulls basically blew that game. The Bulls were on the verge of going up 3-1, and it was their legit last chance for Tom Thibodeau and Derrick Rose to get this team to the finals. Do I think they would have beaten the Warriors? No, but at least if we saw a Derrick Rose-led team get to the finals, that would have been nice. They missed so many easy shots and layups. All they had to do was make their shots late in the game. They would have won that game. It would not have come down to that LeBron buzzer beater. That game right there ended the Derrick Rose era. That was it right there.
Yeah, that was a toughie. Number 3 on my list, I have the Blackhawks Game 7 loss to the Kings in the conference finals in overtime, with the overtime goal off of Nick Leddy. And if they would have won that, they would have absolutely won their 4th Stanley Cup in that era, because there was no way they were losing to the Rangers. That was basically the Stanley Cup finals right there, because whoever won between the Blackhawks and the Kings was going to be the Stanley Cup champion. And the Kings got it in overtime Game 7, and they ended up getting the Stanley Cup and stomping on the Rangers.
That's my number 2. So I might as well talk about it now. That loss hurt in so many different ways. They were up 2-0 right off the bat, and I was watching with some friends, and we're like, this is over. This is over. When do the finals start? Whose house are we getting together with to watch Game 1? And the worst part of it is the Kings scored 2 goals that probably shouldn't have counted. One had an offsides with Marion Gaborik and Joe Carter. The other was a borderline high stick. Maybe you give him that one, but if the coach's challenge was around in 2014, Quenneville probably would have challenged that goal wouldn't have counted. But even with all that, they were up 4-3 with 7 some minutes to go. I mean, they were that close to going back to the Cup Finals. And even when the Kings tied it, going into overtime, I felt fully confident that they were going to win in overtime. They're at home. They have the magic. They still have the momentum. They were down 3-1, and here they are in Game 7. It'll be just like Detroit last year. We're going to win this in overtime. It's going to be fine. And then with the blink of an eye, the Kings are mobbing each other on the ice. And
it was so anticlimactic. It when the feeling I had there, all the confidence that I told you I didn't have in the 2003 Cubs game, I had all of that confidence for this overtime, all of it.
Me too.
And the anticlimactic nature of it was it. I know what the Flyers fans must have felt like when Patrick Kane scored the series winning goal.
Oh yeah.
And that's really like, wait, what happened? Why? What is going on? And I was stunned. Like, I just turned the TV off and I sat downstairs on the couch, just in like silence, nothing on, just sitting there. It was really crappy feeling.
Well, like you said, anticlimactic. When Alec Martinez made that initial shot before you really saw it go anywhere, it looked like just a harmless wrist shot that was either going to be blocked away by Crawford or going to be stopped in front by one of the Hawks around the net. But it ends up bouncing off Nick Leddy, going over Crawford. He had no chance to stop it. And, like, it was over. And it was at home. The place sounded like it was empty because you could hear a pin drop in there. Like, just the blink of an eye, this magical run from being the defending champs to being one goal away from going back to the finals, knowing a finals you'd probably win, just being over like that. I was in denial like the first 5-10 minutes. I'm like, no, this can't end this way. And I was kind of waiting during the Kings celebration because Kenny Albert was saying, oh, well, they're telling the TV crew to stay off the ice. I'm thinking, oh, are they going to call it a no goal? Was he like offsides? Was there a high stick? What's going on? I was kind of waiting for it. And you could argue there was a slash behind the net right before that goal was called. Or that goal was scored, I should say. So I was kind of waiting a few seconds. I'm like, wait, maybe they'll call this off. And then no, all of a sudden the Blackhawks are getting in the handshake line, and so are the Kings. But even so, when they're shaking hands, I'm like, no, this can't end like this. This can't end like this. And then all summer, I not a day went by that summer I didn't think about that. I'm like, the stupid, fluky LA Kings, they didn't deserve shit. We were the better team. It should have been our second Stanley Cup, not the stupid Kings that got all these fluky bounces go their way and all. It angered me. And then 2015 happened, and the heartbreak really subsided from that.
What's your next one?
So my number 3 was Week 17 against Green Bay in 2013, when it was 4th and 8. The Bears just needed one more stop to win the NFC North, and then Rodgers escapes Julius Peppers by like an eyelash, throws downfield, and there's Randall Cobb wide open. If there is a game that pisses me off more than any other loss in my lifetime, not heartbreak, just pisses me off, it's that one.
My number 2 is a game, one you already talked about, was the loss to the Colts in the Super Bowl.
Mm-hmm.
And the heartbreaking one, I didn't think that team was that exceptionally good, but the fact that they made it to the Super Bowl, and you just you were so confident, and you felt good about it. You're like, I think they can win this, and it may not be the best team ever, but a Super Bowl win is a Super Bowl win. And when Devin Hester returned the opening kick for a touchdown, I was just like, man, this is it. I was a kid when they won last. I was like, I didn't understand the gravity of everything. I was excited. It was awesome. And I remember every second of it, but this I was an adult, so I kind of understood everything about it, and the way the rest of the game went down, I was just like, it was just heartbreaking. was just so heartbreaking.
Yeah, that was tough. I think I know what each of our number ones are going to be.
Okay.
Mine's the Cody Parkey game.
No, that's an honorable mention for me. That was
Really?
devastating. Yeah.
So what's your number one? I'm very curious.
Walter Payton dying. It was he was so important in my childhood. I mean, I was like a kid when, he was in his heyday. Like, it just made, and the Super Bowl run was so magical. I mean, I wish it was, the 2016 Cubs was a pretty magical season, and there was a lot of cool things. And the World Series was great, and it's one of the coolest things of my life. But the way the 85 Bears were, it was like, it was so much bigger. It was like, it was like you were riding on an unstoppable train, and it was the coolest ride. Everybody was so excited. Everybody just knew they were going to win the Super Bowl, and it was so, and there was no question about it through the playoffs. There was no moments of, oh man, this is anxiety. It was just a party the whole way. It was just a party the whole way. And Walter Payton was, probably the biggest cog in that whole thing. So big in my life, and did so many good things, and so it was my childhood hero. And when he died, I just I remember exactly where I was, and I broke down in tears. I was just, when your hero dies, it was just devastating. I mean, it was, I can't, it just transcended sports in general. It was just, it's sports related, but it transcended the games, and it was just, I would have gladly traded, any sports memory to have the guy live his full life.
Well, I can't argue with that. I can't argue with that at all. I unfortunately was not around to watch Walter Payton, or, when he died, I was 5 years old, so I really don't remember that happening. But, I know obviously what a big impact he had on the whole fan base, and, it was a big deal in football when he passed away. It's one of the all-time greatest players, arguably top 5 greatest players that ever took a football field, passing away. So yeah, I mean, I can't argue with you. That's a good answer. I don't really have to go into details with mine. I mean, we all know what happened a little over a year ago at Soldier Field against the Eagles. I don't want to relive that again. It's too soon.
Yeah, that was a tough one.
I've never been more devastated after a loss than that.
That was how I felt on some of my big ones. So that was, the only reason that I didn't have it in the top 10 is because I didn't expect the Super Bowl. I felt they were a very good team. I didn't think that they were going to win a Super Bowl. I didn't think the offense was good enough. But I just, the way they lost was devastating. And the team that they lost to was devastating. Had they won that game and they lost the next game, I'd have been fine. I mean, it was a tough sled of, teams they would have had to beat, and I would have been totally fine. I mean, obviously as fine as you can losing in the playoffs, but it was just the team and the way it all happened. It was tough.
It would have just been really freaking nice to have a playoff win under your belt that wasn't almost 10 years ago.
Yeah. But I didn't think that they were good enough to win the world or the Super Bowl. So it was, that's why I didn't probably go in my top 10.
Yeah. What are your honorable mentions?
So that was an honorable mention. The 38-34 loss to the Dolphins in the 85 season was on the list.
Okay.
And the reason for that is, like I said, that season was like, it was a giant party, and that was the one bump in the road. And Buddy Ryan and Mike Ditka almost got into a fist fight on the sidelines. And the Dolphins were the only team that was able to figure out the 46 defense, and they just basically carved them up. And you were just like, why can't the Bears stop them? Give up 38 points. And the worst part about it is, because, you know, afterwards you still felt they were winning the Super Bowl. You just knew, you know. But the worst part about it is the stupid 72 Dolphins were all on the sidelines celebrating and hooting and hollering that their team was still the only undefeated team. And it drives me nuts because, I'm sorry, the 72 Dolphins are one of the worst Super Bowl winning teams in the history of the Super Bowl era. The 85 Bears would have stomped a mud hole in the 72 Dolphins. I would put every penny I've ever made and my life on that.
And all of his corner pieces of Chicago Tavern style pizza.
From here to eternity, I would give them all away. Because there's no way the 72 Dolphins could beat the 85 Bears.
Okay.
And to watch them stand on the sidelines and hoot and holler, still to this day, whenever they pop their champagne and they celebrate, I still get angry at it.
Yeah. Hey, at least we have a more recent Super Bowl victory than they do, and we didn't waste one of the greatest quarterbacks of all times and not win a Super Bowl under him.
Yeah. And then I have one more honorable mention, and this isn't Chicago related per se.
Mm-hmm.
I guess it's not at all, but my college football team is the Michigan Wolverines.
Yeah.
And the 2005 Rose Bowl loss to the Texas Longhorns was just, I was a train wreck after that. You know, I love college bowl season. I love the bowl games. Even, you know, you give me any stupid bowl, I'm watching it. And, you know, for the Texas Longhorns and the Michigan Wolverines in their storied history, 2005 Rose Bowl was the first time they ever played each other.
Really?
And Michigan took the lead late in the game, and with no time left, Texas drove 47 yards in 10 plays and won on a 37-yard field goal. Vince Young that game for Texas had 192 yards rushing and 4 touchdowns. They could not stop Vince Young. He didn't throw for anything. I think he threw for like 170 yards or something. Like, it wasn't that many yards. I think he had no touchdowns passing, but he had 4 touchdowns rushing, and they just couldn't stop him at all. And it was devastating, and it came down to the kick. And I remember I was standing there just like not breathing. This kick, I'm like, they gotta miss this kick. Michigan's gotta win this. And the kick goes up and it's good. And I just like fell to my knees, holding my head. And I was probably there for an hour, just like, I can't believe this. Like, I can't believe this happened. You know, they were up by 10 and going to the fourth quarter, and, you know, Texas couldn't stop them on, you know, the Michigan offense, and Vince Young just became invincible.
All right, interesting list.
What are your honorable mentions?
Okay, so I'm probably sure there's more. Here's ones I could just think of at the top of my head. 2011, the Tim Tebow game. Oh, that game makes me want to puke.
Yeah, that was aggravating.
Oh. Last year, the Bryce Harper Grand Slam. I mean, that pretty much nailed the coffin shut for the 2019 Cubs. More or less.
Yeah, that's a rough one too. There's a lot of bad ones.
Yeah, I also included 2016 Game 7 against the Blues when we lost 3-2. Almost came back and won that series, but came up just a little bit short. And this is another one. I really hate the 2013 Bears because they finally had an offense that clicked, but then their defense just went to absolute shit. So it's like, are you kidding me? That overtime loss against the Vikings in Minnesota, where Robbie Gould missed the kick and then they eventually won. They win that game. It doesn't come down to that game against the Packers in Week 17. That one really stung.
Yeah, that's you've got some bad ones in there.
Yeah, it just one more I just remembered. This is one that's rarely talked about. Rarely talked about. But do you remember 2008 when the Bears were playing a really bad Texans team in Week 17? And if no matter what, if they would have won that game, they would have made the playoffs.
Yes.
And they lost.
Yes.
Like, it didn't matter. Even if they ended up being a wild card, who cares? You would have been in the playoffs.
Many heartbreaking games.
Yeah.
So many stupid heartbreaking games.
So I figure next week we could do like some of our favorite games, favorite moments.
That's probably a good one because there's going to be nothing else to talk about.
Yeah.
Because there's nothing baseball. And nothing baseball. And, I doubt there's going to be anything Bears related. So that should be good to bring up a positive memories.
Yeah. So we could do that next week.
All right. So is there anything else you wanted to talk about?
No, I think I've said my piece.
All right. Well, I think that's going to do it for this episode of Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago. I want to thank everybody so much for listening. Please hit subscribe however you listen to podcasts, whether it's iTunes, Stitcher, YouTube, TuneIn app, Spotify, Google Play, however. Hit subscribe. Follow us on social media at ShyFanPat1, at Swerski Sports, Facebook.com/Swerski Sports, SwerskiSports.com. Again, thank you guys so much for listening. And until next time, bear down.
Cubs win! What a lucky break! The good Lord wants the Cubs to win!
We thank Ditka and God for all they have provided.
Cubs win! Cubs win! Cubs win!
Oh, I don't want her. You can have her. She's a Packer fan.
She can't fit in my van.
And she looks like number New Yorkers. Smoking crack is not legal on planes. Bears 31 to -7. The Bears. Oh, when the Bears go bearing down.